Hey guys, wanted to make a quick video today showing you what I've done here with my desktop. This is my first time using a product called Waterlox. I'll turn the camera here so you can see those two cans. And Waterlox is basically a tung oil and resin based coating you can put in a sealer on wood surfaces. So it's kind of like a woodworking thing. Now I've done woodworking projects before, and usually I'll use something from Home Depot, kind of like your Minwax brand stuff like urethanes and water-based stuff and stuff like that. But for this particular project I wanted something that was very durable, that was very water resistant, and something that would probably last me 10-20 years with the ability to finish it pretty easily. I mean, refinish, you know, in case I put any gouges in it or scratches or stuff like that. So to start off, what I'm working on here is a top for a desk. It's an L-shaped desk, and you can kind of see the shape right here. You got the longer leg over there, and then you got the shorter one here right behind me. And I bought the frame for the desk from UpLift Desk. I'll put a link in the description so you guys can check them out. Basically, it's a frame that raises and lowers the desk with a few preset settings you can stick on there, and basically just push the up button or the down button and it raises and lowers it as you need to. I do a lot of work at a desk in my home office. I sit probably 10 hours a day, maybe 12 sometimes. And I'm realizing that sitting all day is not really good for me. And my chiropractor reminds me of that every time I go in. So this desk is my solution to that. That way I can sit when I get a little tired, or I can stand all day, and I'm a lot more productive, and my heartbeat is raised a little bit, so I'm also burning a lot more calories just standing while I'm at work. Anyways, that's kind of the background of what I'm doing here. I got some butcher block a few years back from IKEA. They were selling it on some crazy sale for $80 a sheet, and I'm talking like 8-foot sheets by 25 inches by, I think it's an inch and an eighth thick. So we're talking some pretty heavy oak butcher block here. So what I decided to do, since I didn't really have a purpose for it, I was going to use it for countertops, but I decided to use it for my desk. Now I ripped some of the sheets. You can probably see the seam if you look really closely over here to your left. On this one I hit it pretty well, on this one not so well, but it's good enough and it hides it pretty well. Anyways, so I ripped the seam off of one board and I tied it to the other board, and then I kind of attached two pieces for the other board for the other leg, and it worked out pretty well. And I decided to sand it all down, make sure it's all really smooth, wipe it down with denatured alcohol so all of the little particles come off, and then go straight to finishing. Now I bought the standard sealer and finish from Waterlox right here. You can take a little better look at the product. And again, this is the first time I'm using it, so it was kind of an experiment, kind of, you know, to see how it would work. I wasn't entirely sure what my results would be like. So I went to the website, and the website kind of recommended, based on the square footage that I needed to cover, that I should do 2 coats of sealer and 1 coat of the high gloss. And I wanted the high gloss because I kind of like that nice, smooth, mirror kind of glass surface finish to it. I didn't want satin for this particular project. The problem is, when I actually started working, I put 2 coats on, and they recommend you put it on pretty liberally. I put 2 coats on with 24 hours dry time in between, and after the second coat I still noticed there were some rough spots where the wood was still soaking in the sealer, and I'm talking we're pretty heavy coats here. And so I had to order another bottle online. I got that one on Amazon. The first couple I ordered directly from the company, and I did another 3rd coat. After the 3rd coat, what I did was I basically sanded everything down with 600 grit. Now they recommend 320 to 400 grit, and then steel wool to kind of buff it up so that you don't show scratches through the finish. I just went straight to 600, and I wet sanded it using paint thinner as a lubricant, so it didn't gum up and it didn't burn up or anything like that. It just went on straight, smooth, and everything was perfectly great. So that went well. The problem was that the rest of it didn't quite go so well. The first time I tried to put the finish on, I kind of did what they recommend as far as cleaning the brushes. Now I generally use pretty good brushes. I don't buy, you know, the cheapest stuff on the market, and I kind of wanted to reuse the same brush. I mean, if I spent 15 bucks on a brush, I may as well use it more than once. Now I use the same brush over here, which I got from Home Depot. It's just a 4-inch bristle brush. It's a white china bristle brush, and white bristle china, whatever you want to call it. And I put all the base coats on there, and then I sanded off all the imperfections to make sure it's 100% smooth. Now after 24 hours, I cleaned this like they said to, using, you know, just kind of, you know, spreading all the bristles and dabbing it in a container full of paint thinner, and then dumping the paint thinner out, refilling it, and doing it over and over and over again until you don't see any more color coming off the brush. You'd think that was a good idea. The problem was that they advise you don't leave it in the paint thinner because it tends to gel up. It leaves little beads, like tiny little beads. And even though I had dried this off, I still started getting some beads when I put the first coat of finish on. And so I'd coated this entire 8-foot section and it started showing up beads. So I basically had to waste a bunch of rags full of paint thinner to take the finish all off so I can do it all over again, because well, it just looked awful. And so I realized at that point, I got to step back. I have to order another, coat of another can of the high gloss finish, because I had used up like half of it by that point on only one of my surface tops. So that was a problem. Recommended, if you want to do this yourself, if you want to use the high gloss finish, you do not use the same brush. I highly recommend that you go out and you buy a second brush for your finish coat. I got this one at Menards. It specifically was in the wood stains and wood finishes section, and it was advertised as a finishing brush. I don't know what the difference really is, but I figured, hey, if it's advertised as a wood finishing brush, that's what I'll use. It was also recommended that I get some dish cleaning towels. Apparently those are pretty good lint-free options that you can use to spread out the finish all over your your project, and apparently that worked pretty well. What I ended up actually doing is I used what I had left of the high gloss from my original container, and I spread it on all the surfaces. Now, I made two mistakes. The first mistake was using steel wool. Apparently some of that stuff stuck to the surface. I don't know how, but it ended up showing up in little steel lint pieces, if you will. And the second mistake I made was that on my initial brush, which I had used to spread everything on, I had cleaned this brush with one of those blue shop towels, which apparently are full of lint. Who knew, right? And when you dry this off and the lint sticks in the bristles, and then you go put your coat on a piece of wood, you end up with these tiny little pieces of lint all over the place. It was infuriating because by the time you were done, you look at it and it wasn't smooth. It had these imperfections all over the entire surface. So that was really frustrating, and that's pretty much what led me to go buy a second brush. What I ended up having to do is I had to sand everything down a second time. And this time I just did 600 grit. Just use a sanding block and these 3M wet sanding 600 grit sandpaper sheets. All right. And what I did was just sand everything completely flat. And when you're sanding, you can kind of tell when you hit like a ridge or an imperfection, because you can hear it scraping just that one little piece. And so you basically go across the entire section, the length of the board, or with the grain, as they would call it, instead of against it, and just keep going until it's smooth. And you can kind of feel with your hand, kind of where it is, and add a little more paint thinner just to make sure it's totally smooth. So once I finished doing that, what I did was use this brand new brush, took it right out of the package, just beat it up against my arm a few times to make sure any residue or any lint was off of it, and then I proceeded to apply the finish. Now, another mistake I made, which I advise you don't, is I used the original can. Now, there was 24 hours between the first time that I applied the first finish, sanded it, actually 48 hours, and I tried to apply the second coat of high gloss. And the problem was that once you open up one of these containers, the product inside, once it's exposed to oxygen, can start to gel up a little bit. And just my luck, of course, it started to gel up as soon as I started, putting it down. I don't mean like gel up as I'm putting it down, but there were again little beads in there, which were from the old can that I had used. So what I ended up having to do is again soak some cheesecloth, which I had bought just for wiping, with paint thinner, and take all of the finish off. Now at that point I'd only used up I'd only covered about half of this surface right here, so it wasn't too bad. Still a pain in the butt, to be totally honest with you. I wish they would have told me that I should not reuse the same finish if I want this kind of high gloss surface that I'm trying to use. In any case, I ended up finally cleaning everything off, cleaning my brush all over again, and using a brand new container of high gloss. And I basically put that container of high gloss in a little plastic container, fresh, brand new one. I started laying it on all over again. And that was the first time I actually achieved the results that I wanted. Some of these things I wish I would have known ahead of time, and I'm trying to share this with you so you can kind of know what not to do. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Again, if you're going to put a high gloss finish on something using Waterlox, I highly recommend you get your own brush one for the base coats and one for the finishes. I don't recommend you use both of them unless you have a method that I don't know about that you can clean the bristle brush extremely well to where none of the base coat product is gonna basically gel up or bead up around the bristles even after you cleaned it. Because again, I soaked this thing like 6 or 7 times in fresh solution of paint thinner and still ended up having those issues with the product gelling up like that. I'm not entirely sure why. And I also have a compressor that I used to blow everything off to make sure there's no dust or lint before I start brushing it off, so I know that wasn't part of my problem. Anyways, I'm finally happy to say that after about 2 weeks of working on this project, I haven't really been able to do it day after day after day. You know, they recommend 24 hours between coats. I was finally able to get it done. Last night at 8:30, I applied my last coat of finish. It's not 100% perfect, but for me, it's very good, okay? I think it's gonna be very difficult to get 100% perfect finish coat without any light sanding and buffing afterward to make sure that each little imperfection, I mean, I'm working in a garage here, and if you look at the top, I don't have a ceiling. I just have rafters up there. And so, you know, if somebody bumps the wall on the other side where the house is, I'm gonna have dust falling and settling. It's just the nature of what you're trying to do here. So you're gonna have a few imperfections here and there, but they are barely noticeable when you run your hand across the finish. So anyways, I kind of wanted to show you what the results of this project were. Again, right now I've got 3 base coats of sealer and finish, which is this product right here. And I've got 2 coats of high gloss. I only have 1 coat, which I sanded down pretty far, and then I put another second coat on top of that. So I'm going to show you right quick what this actually looks like. Alright, so you can probably see some of the little specks that I was talking about when I run the camera over it. And again, it's very good for what it is. You can barely notice them when you're running your hand across them. This is kind of what I was going for. I wanted a high gloss finish that was very durable. You can really see in the reflection just how smooth I ended up being able to get it. And you kind of see that seam that I was talking about right over here. But that's going to be to the back of the desk where everything's being covered up anyway, so I don't mind that. For the rounded edge over here, I just used a router bit with, I believe it was a 1/4 inch radius round over. And that worked out really well. And this is basically what my desktop looks like. So from this point forward, it's going to be another 7 days to cure, and I believe the website said another 30 to 60 for full hardness and chemical resistance. One of the cool things I liked about using the Waterlox product is, you know, sometimes after work I might have a beer or something, or might have you know, some kind of a drink, and a lot of times when you put them on a surface like that, they start condensing on the outside, and the condensation leaves little water spots. Well, apparently if you use Waterlox, it basically resists the condensation so much that you don't even leave little condensation rings on the work surface, which is really cool. It's going to be a very resistant surface. I'm going to be joining these sections right here. I'm just kind of having them apart right now. I kind of stopped the round over right where the part would join. And what's actually neat is these were actually convex and concave right here, and as soon as I started applying the finish, it actually ended up getting flat. I was kind of worried about that because normally when you apply a finish, the water on the surface is what tends to cause it to expand out. So I expected that since I was sealing up the top, it would actually become even more concave because only the bottom is actually absorbing any water. But somehow I actually achieved the exact opposite of that, and both of my surfaces totally flattened out. So I'm very happy about that because it'll be much easier for me. And then you can probably see this one's still got a little bit of a bow to it, but that'll be okay. The frame of the desk is going to cover that up, is going to straighten that out pretty well. Alright, well, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys got something from this. If you have any questions about what I did, what products I use, you know, the preparation methods, anything like that, just leave me a comment and I'll answer as soon as I can. Alright, thanks, guys.